Hello everybody. So I recently hit level 70 with my hunter on Hellground and started some high-end dungeons. It has been a pretty good experience so far with a few minor issues here and there, and I would like to use the recent Shadowlab run as an example and to point out a few things that I do like and the things that could use some major improvements in my opinion. So without further ado, let's talk about the normal dungeon Hellground experience. So you might have noticed this already, but we had a very nice dungeon group with us. Highlevel, and I always enjoy paladin tanks in dungeons. I think they are doing a great job, and so was this group, especially tank and healer. I think it's important to point it out since of course this also kinda reflects on the overall dungeon experience. The first thing I noticed when we pulled a few groups was that apparently I was doing a lot of damage. Now I don't want to brag or anything, my gear is still crap, and I mean, as a hunter you generally do a lot of damage, especially early on. But what I mean is like in comparison to when I fight enemies while questing, you know, NPCs around my level range in the open world basically. And I also know that of course we got buffs and everything, but still like it felt a bit too high. And I think that brings me to my first issue, like the scaling on some of the dungeon NPCs seems to be a bit off. I'm not too sure if they have a very low armor value or how to fix stuff like that, but this might need some fine tuning. I should also point out that it's not every NPC, but for me there were enough occurrences to talk about this issue. So the next important question would be, how's the behavior of those enemies? Do healers use their heal? Do mages cast their spells? And scripts along those lines? And for the most part I can say yes they do, and they do it pretty well. But of course also here there are some minor issues, like ranged NPCs getting stuck on walls or just getting plain confused and being free loot basically. But for the most part again, it works, and I guess that's something that you have to decide for yourself. I personally, I don't mind it that much. But of course, that's only my perception of the game, and it might be a complete deal breaker for you. So let's move on to mechanics that I find to be very important. And as you can imagine, those are the boss fights. The dungeons that I did so far were pretty basic, starting with the ramparts, blood furnace, recently also catacombs, and I didn't encounter any major bugs in those boss fights. And I'm happy to say that for the Shadow Labyrinth, things also went very well. Starting off with Ambassador Helmore. After clearing the room in front of him, he starts attacking the group, and what can I say, it's a pretty basic tank and spank fight. He has a skill called Corrosive Acid, which he uses in a frontal cone, and he also has an AoE Fear, both of which he casted in our encounter. I'm not too sure if in retail he used it a bit more often though. I think in the end he only used his Fear one time and his Corrosive Acid 2 times. But I'm just going to say that everything worked correctly with this one. Pretty easy, straightforward boss, just keep your range, stand behind him to not get hit by the cone, and maybe in heroic mode pop some cooldowns right before the Fear. Then we went to Blackheart the Inciter, and oh boy was that a chaotic teamfight. But it's kind of the whole point of it with this one, to be honest. He uses a spell called Incite Chaos, which just mind controls the whole party, making everyone fight against each other. And I was a bit concerned about this one because the mechanics are pretty advanced, I could imagine. But Hellground apparently was able to pull it off, let's say for the most part, because unfortunately in the end we still encountered some bugs. For one, the tank was still being able to be attacked, and an NPC from the other rune just came running right into us. The good thing was that the bug with the paladin resolved itself very fast, and we also were able to handle the crazy ad that we pulled for whatever reason. So all things considered, I would say for a fight that's meant to be chaotic and it has some pretty advanced mechanics, this one went kinda well. Next one on the list was Grandmaster Warple, another boss with some interesting mechanics, and yet again a boss fight that was scripted very good. He casts an AoE damage effect called Shadowbolt Volley, and he did cast it quite frequently, but not to the point where it was unfair. He teleports people on an altar, where he also casts Rain of Fire on them, so you have to get out of there as soon as possible, and also that mechanic worked flawlessly. And he also summons NPCs called Void Travelers, who walk slowly towards him and have to be killed immediately, otherwise they pretty much explode rate. So I think it's fair to say that this is a pretty complex boss fight, and again I was amazed. It felt challenging, but not too hard, and at least the way I saw it, everything seemed to be working. Unfortunately the trinket that dropped was a piece of shit, but you can hardly blame the server for that, right? In any case, moving on to Momor. He starts at 40% HP, and don't worry, that's intended. and is probably considered one of the hardest bosses in the heroic version. But in the normal one he's manageable, and on Hellground he even felt a bit too easy. For one, the damage I was able to deal to him felt a bit too high again, and I could imagine that he uses his ability Sonic Boom, an AoE ability out of which you have to go as soon as possible, way more frequent usually. So yeah, since we are talking about mechanics, if you are a melee damage class, run out of the circle to avoid that AoE blast. And he also uses Momo's Touch, which blows you up after a short while, dealing damage to you and silencing you and everything around you, so spreading out in this team fight is rather important. But yeah, again, we didn't encounter too much of those mechanics, since I think the damage was just too high and he went down too fast, so I would argue that some fine-tuning is needed on that one. And speaking about fine-tuning, I think that makes a good conclusion for the dungeon and playing experience in Hellground in general. It seems like that a lot of scripting work already has been done, and I'm no expert on this, but I could imagine that stats like armor, HP, resistance could be balanced rather easy, but again, I might be wrong about that. I was very happy to see that the mechanics for the most part were working, and what can I say, I had a lot of fun again. So personal subjective summary is that I enjoyed very much to play in the server currently, and I'm looking forward to playing on it even more, with the hopes that the developers will find the time and skill to polish all the things that I mentioned already. So I guess that's it for now. I will do more dungeons, I will try to get even into heroics and raids at a later point, and I will keep you up to date. I hope you found the information that I provided in this video helpful, and if you enjoyed it, then I would appreciate it very much if you could leave a like. It helps out a ton. As always, thank you very much for watching. Maybe I can see you in game sometime, and until then, have a great evening and bye.